This is the second of the 5 movies on business process re-engineering, and this one's on sequence and principles of BPR. So when should you apply BPR? Here are some processes involved in re-engineering a company's processes, and they are, in overview: prepare to re-engineer processes, map the as-is processes as they are now, design the to-be processes, and then implement them, and set some KPIs to show the improvement, and then improve. So in preparation for BPR, we build cross-functional teams, identify customer objectives, and develop a strategic purpose. Then we map the as-is processes. We might benchmark against other companies to develop our to-be processes. So in the as-is stage, we create activity models, process models, simulations, and then identify any problems that there are with processes so that we can model the new ones, which we validate during the design to be process stage, and then perform trade-off analysis. We then implement the re-engineered processes with an implementation plan. We prototype them and simulate them in terms of transitioning to them, and then initiate training programs, and then implement the transition plan. And then from then on, it's a series of continuous improvement steps which we make to continue the re-engineering process on a continuous basis. When should BPR be applied? Well, one thing that is not beneficial is to take an old process and apply technology to it, because what you end up with then is an expensive old process. You also need to think about whether you should re-engineer processes first and then introduce ERP afterwards. Well, that sounds fairly obvious that you would do that, but the problem is you may then not benefit from the best practice that ERP software vendors have generated over a period of some 50-60 years, and so it's a question of what is right for the particular case you're looking at. And you may consider looking at clean slate BPR or technology enabled re-engineering. There are horses for courses in each case. Clean slate re-engineering means start from scratch, and you say, well, if we had no limits, what would the process we end up with? How would we implement that? What would it consist of? This leads to a good free flow of ideas and some unique processes that may lead to breakthrough competitive advantage. First movers in an industry can adopt these processes easily. As an example, when Pilkington came up with a float glass process where you float molten glass over mercury, giving a very smooth, flat pane of glass, which they had a patent on for some years. They took the market. But it's not always as simple as that. Can be very expensive and certainly risky for followers. So we think about benchmarking of as-is processes with world-class performers to see how well our processes gone, and benchmarking is quite a good thing to do. Technology-enabled re-engineering is a kind of more continuous approach to business process improvement, and we do that with ERP systems, for example. The downside of that will be that if you don't follow those best practices, and there have been some instances in the past where companies actually modified the software to work more like how the company worked, thus doing away with the benefits of all those best practices that were built into the software. It's true that employees will see ERP implementations as imposing a straitjacket on the way they work, but there needs to be patience to see that these best practices and give them time to work and to see how they'll work. Tenets of BPR, kind of truths. Key elements of successful BPR are making those that use the output of a process perform it, so they see all the ins and outs of that. Organise around outcomes, not tasks. Merge information processing work into the real work, so it's actually part of the tasks that they're doing. Information processing isn't a separate element. Treat geographically dispersed resources like centralised ones. Link parallel activities instead of integrating their results, and put decisions in and control in the hands of those who do the work. And finally, capture information once and at its source. These are the Hamber and Champy's kind of elements from the book which I talked about in an earlier movie. Having impact. So the first stage, have those who use a process output perform the process. And so for example, one consideration might be that if you're in international markets and you're buying locally produced and supplied materials, they may differ in some way to those in other countries. You have to think about how will you enable staff to do more of the process via IT, and also how will you enable them to build the process so it doesn't get adversely affected by parts from different regions. Staff also may only need authority to run a process their way to improve it. They may know, the people who do the work actually may know the best way of doing it, and often do. Organise the work around outcomes, not tasks. So we're not interested in what the inputs, the transformations, the outputs. What we're looking for is outcomes. So from the entire process, so for example, order to cash, design to sell, or procure to pay processes, we're looking for the outputs and an improvement in efficiency in those. There's a link there to procure to pay from Ariba. Ariba is a large trading platform which was procured by SAP a few years ago, and it's become one of the largest trading platforms serving large companies. Tenets of BPR. Data versioning. It's important that we centralise data, it's cleansed so that there are no missing records, and that it's been given through the full quality assurance process. We don't want data silos. If we have data stored in more than one place, and sometimes it may be in different languages for the same bits of data, then you can lead to duplication of data, and then people won't trust it as being authoritative. And we must also implement data versioning. Treat geographically dispersed resources as if centralised. Through the use of information systems, we can make sure that we access the data and then rebroadcast it from the centre to separate regions. And that's very much the focus of ERP, to have centralised data stores, process repositories and databases. This leads to extra reliability and more faith in the system, and less likelihood of employees frigging the system to try and meet the needs of one customer and then finding that all stock records are wrong later on. Link parallel activities instead of integrating their results. If activities can happen in parallel, link them early on rather than wait for one to finish before activating the other. So an example of that would be concurrent engineering teams at Rank Xerox. They do design and manufacturing design at the same time in parallel, instead of waiting for the design to be finished to find out that you actually can't make the product that's been designed because of poor manufacturability. Put decisions in control with those doing the work. So the day-to-day workforce who are doing these tasks on a day-to-day basis should be empowered to make their suggestions and to improve the process, and managers should focus on how processes can be strategically improved. Devolve decision-making authority downward to enhance strategy focus, and ideally with a more flatter management structure. So in the case of Mutual Benefit Life, they took a process that used to involve 5 departments, 19 people and 31 steps, and that was replaced by 1 case manager with authority to make decisions, where the remaining supervision facilitated the work of case managers, and the case managers were the focus, but the supervision in the background helped to facilitate things, speeding up claims and greatly reducing costs. And so flatter structures can help. Systems can include automatic authority limits to allow authority up to a certain level, beyond which a manager has to be involved. And these authority limits are embedded in web services that handle that authority process. Capture information once and it is sourced. We already saw in a previous movie how Cisco had eliminated 12 rekeying steps, and this is central to improve efficiency and reduce incomplete and incorrect data, to eliminate rekeying as far as possible. And ERP helps certainly with that. So the consequences of business process re-engineering: it results in flatter management structures with less layers, centralized single point data entry, decentralized information access, multi-skilling of individuals, greater empowerment of individuals, simultaneous working, parallel processes, and continuous improvement. And that leads to flexibility, client focus, reduced costs, reduced rework, and reduced cycle times. So that's BPR then. We've covered it. Well, maybe not. So in the next section, I'd like you to have a look at the video below. It's a YouTube video, and there are books, and you can find these on the Enterprise Solutions portal. You can access them there, and there are some downloadable books in the series BPM Dummies. So this first video of 2 looks at somebody who maybe is faking it and really doesn't know a lot about business process management, the kind of modern form of business process re-engineering, and we'll see how Ed N. Sand gets on in his company as he takes over as Chief Operating Ostrich. And that's the end of this briefing. Thank you very much.